Hi, good afternoon from me, Kevin Owen. Just turned 2 p.m. here in Moscow. This is RT International. Our top story today, police in the French capital have used tear gas overnight against protesters in a second night of rallies against police brutality. Hundreds came out to vent their anger after a Chinese man was killed by police on Sunday. Our correspondent in Paris, Charlotte Dubensky, has been following the latest.
Several hundred people have arrived for this second night of protesting here in Paris, and they've been shouting slogans like "Police assassin, police killers, police are racist." Being thrown up here by the police as they are responding now to these chants, and it is now a second night of protests here in Paris.
I would prefer the police people to be less violent, more. They have too much power for what their brain power can support. I think they don't deserve to have that much power.
The crowds throwing Molotov cocktails to the police and bottles, and the police responding in kind with tear gas. They've come out in their hundreds to protest against the death of a Chinese man. Two different accounts as to what happened. The police say they were responding to him when he opened the door and he tried to attack a police officer with a pair of scissors. Now, the family say that's not true. They say their father went to open the door. He had the scissors in his hands because he was preparing food. And when he opened the door, the police stormed in and they shot him. Now, people have come out for a second night. They're saying they want truth, they want justice, they want to know what happened, and they also want the stopping of what they call casual racism towards Chinese people living in France.
Situation is because our friend was killed. And he be killed not because of his violence, but because of the government, of the police.
I want the police to tell the truth, and also, I think this is a result of racism because, I don't know, they can just shoot a Chinese man like whatever. Maybe our life doesn't value as much as a white man.
People are out again tonight. They're angry, they're upset, and they're not the only ones. The Chinese government has also called on France to offer more protection to Chinese citizens living here.
The Chinese community in France is the largest in Europe, in fact, and they say they've endured years of racism and abuse and that authorities have done little about it. Last year, thousands protested after a Chinese man died after being mugged in a Paris suburb. Before taking to the streets this time round, protesters, organisers there sent out a list, apparently, of things those attending should take with them. Some quite alarming, too, via the Chinese messenger app WeChat, including black sportswear, a mask or scarf and gloves. And it also suggested, this is the alarming bit, taking an iron bar, a glass bottle, maybe flour or eggs. We spoke to a human rights activist and a civil liberties activist based in Paris about how the unrest could fuel tensions in society and impact on these big upcoming elections there too.
The temperature right now in France in regards to the election, there is an open defiance towards the establishment in our political system. Almost every single candidate is embroiled in corruption cases. So this, of course, adds defiance between people and the political establishment. So now the responsibility is on the shoulders of the government. This will add, of course, oil to the fire with the police now putting the blame on minorities and then putting the blame on the government. And the government stood by the police all along the way, and of course we haven't seen any courage from policymakers to at least give a strict framework for the usage of lethal weapons from the police.
As fighting rages over the Iraqi city of Mosul, still held by Islamic State, Amnesty International is blaming the US-led coalition for not taking precautions to prevent civilian deaths there. People there, the choice to escape the city or to stay is one with deadly consequences either way. Many say they were instructed, though, to remain there in their homes by authorities despite the ongoing air campaign. Our correspondent at that place, Murad Gazdi, reports from Iraq.
Nothing has been spared. Schools, hospitals, homes are now rubble. Mosul is an urban graveyard, a broken concrete skeleton. This is a classic street in the liberated parts of Mosul. lifeless, devastated, inhospitable, empty. We're on a press tour with the Iraqi military. They're taking us around the city. It's been a relatively quiet day, although you could probably hear the explosions and gunfire in the distance. Over the night, though, around midnight, US-led coalition jets going to and from Mosul every 5-10 minutes. Certainly, there were a lot of airstrikes last night. Neighborhoods that numbered in the thousands have been reduced to a handful, predominantly the elderly, too old and too tired to run. It doesn't matter where you go, it all looks virtually the same. Crumbled buildings, debris, airstrike craters. You can walk for hours and it's all you'll see. That and fighting. That's an Iraqi helicopter launching missiles at ISIS targets and you can hear ISIS small arms fire. They're targeting the helicopter in turn. Comes in, it circles, if it sees a target it shoots, otherwise it drops flares and goes for another circle. Those ISIS fighters, experience shows, are likely in or on a building full of civilians, their human shield, and those civilians are being told to stay put.
كنا نسمع بس راديو، موبايلات ماكو، تلفزيونات ماكو، بس نسمع راديو بالسيارة، منشورات كانوا يزتون بالطيارة، ابقوا منازلكم بلقوا بالأحسن. أيوه. بالتعليمات قالوا ظلوا حتى لا تطلعوا، لأن ما عندنا شيء. على اعتبار المواطن اللي ما عنده شيء يظل قاعد ببيته.
You just saw what Mosul looks like. Imagine if everyone followed the army's instructions, if all these houses were full of people at the time they were hit. It would have been mass murder.
واحنا كنا حراس مثل قاعدين بخان وقع علينا هاون ورحت على بيت عيالي هم انا وقع عليهم صاروخ هم انا وانهزمنا هيك صارت ما قلت لك وطشرقنا كل من صار جواديره ما عرفوا ما وين راحوا واحنا جينا هنا.
الدواعش احنا ما نعرف فيه هم طوابق عاليه يشطون مثل الجراد حشاش من سطح على سطح فاحنا قاعدين جوا ما نقدر نطلع من الفشل من سطح على سطح جايب سطح هذا اليمنى ودا يضرب الطيار ضربه.
You'd think that helping people escape the battlefield, ISIS and airstrikes would be the logical thing to do. Alas, no. Washington is against humanitarian corridors, as they made clear during the liberation of Aleppo and the Russian-backed efforts to allow safe passage for civilians.
And I've seen, reports that they're allowed to leave. They shouldn't have to leave. And they shouldn't be being bombed by their own government and by the Russian military. And that's what needs to stop.
And the answer is to stay alive and to get away from the bombs stamped with "Made in the USA." Morad Gazdiev, RT, from Mosul, Iraq.